Today on the Idiot's Guide, we are talking about next-gen AI. What are the industry leaders saying about it? What do we say about it? Let's just admit that AI is more like the permanent awkward roommate you don't really want around. And then, could you imagine 81 years of overdue fees on a library book? Honestly, people, it's not that bad. I'm your host, Adam Richardson, aka the Prophet Hacker, and I'm joined by the man in charge, Mr. Joe Haslam. Welcome to the Idiot's Guide. Well, we are here with another episode of the Idiot's Guide. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to jump right into this and ask some interesting questions because I've been curious. I've watched all the Terminator movies. I've watched even the TV series that came out years ago. That so there's some serious little bit of extra heartbeats when I watch these shows, and then I interact with my AI tools that I use, and I imagine that someday I'm going to be sitting here typing away using what I use for AI, and then I'm going to get strangled by a robot because that's what happens. Or the whole city gets nuked because that also happens. Or the future me is going to come back to save me because of the future me that I become because of the future that came. I have no idea. I'm lost, but AI kind of helps that anxiety exist. What do you have to say about it, Joe?
This isn't real AI.
What?
What we have is, and you said it right, it's tools.
Tools. I'm a tool.
I think we're both tools.
Hey, you can argue with that. It's okay.
No, the big one is ChatGPT. It's not artificial intelligence. It's a large language model.
Okay.
What are some of the other ones that are out there?
There's Seamless AI, there's Bard AI, there's
the image
50,
generation.
Yeah, I mean they're like video editing, website generating.
It's not artificial intelligence. All these is they take the best guess at what the next item would be. And the problem with that is it's using a lot of other people's work to make that happen. So it would be, I mean, the best example of this, and it may sound like it's counter to my argument that this is not real artificial intelligence, but when you have a child who is mimicking your behaviors simply because you're doing something. Okay. So the copycat game. I don't think anyone would ever call the copycat game in and of itself, or the communication that's happening as part of the copycat game, as intelligence. Now, coming up with the copycat game, that's intelligence.
Okay.
But what they're doing themselves is not intelligence. It's just copying information. In my opinion, we've dumbed down the word artificial intelligence, the phrase artificial intelligence, in order to make it sound a lot more impressive than it really is.
I mean, that can go for pretty much everything out there in our society. We make it a lot, even in marketing. Let's say from a marketing perspective, and this is kind of an interesting rabbit trail, but it made me think of it, is when you talk about dumbing down, when you do the research on how much a presidential candidate spends on marketing for their campaigns, they're spending, some of them are spending, $100 million. Okay. Real strong campaigns that win presidencies, you're talking $250 to $300 million for their campaign. Now, one of the things that they don't really tell you is how they're angling in that marketing campaign and who they're marketing to. So the difference is that most people who I guess they don't really understand, or they want to appeal to a particular different audience, is you see that they market toward like a high school level, like a 10th, 11th grade. Some try to, communicate to the college level educated. but the most successful, and this is across the board industry, is fifth grade.
Yep.
So if you angle everything towards you're talking to a fifth grader, and so I just figured if I can come up with things that entertain fifth graders, I'm winning, guys. That is my job.
That is a scary indictment of humanity.
So you say dumb it down. You're like, well, kinda.
Yeah, and really that's what it is. I mean, all it's doing. So for those of you who don't know how these large language models work, or how all this quote unquote artificial intelligence works, in the way of like the artistry or things like that, what it does is it looks at millions and billions and huge numbers of existing artwork or word phrases. And then it looks at what is more likely to come next based on the input. And so it's fast at computing possibilities, but that's all it's doing, is it's taking all the information from before and putting something out there.
So if we no longer produce anything new, then eventually that information stales.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it would be like mathematics is probably the best example, because quote unquote artificial intelligence has a hard time with mathematics. But if we look at math, 1 + 1 = 2. 2 + 2 = 4. 4 + 4 = 8.
I mean, if you ask Common Core, I don't know. Like that might not be it. It's a different interpretation of math. So,
Math doesn't change.
You have to get apples out, and
math doesn't change. This may be a topic for another idiot's guide, but math doesn't change.
That's fine. I'm a math guy, so we'll have another episode. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen.
Attempts to change math don't work. Math doesn't change.
Fair enough.
But all ChatGPT does, all these models would end up doing, is everything that we have ones, we have twos, we have threes, we have fours. All it's doing is it's reordering the ones, twos, threes, and fours to make something. And so if it gets to a point where it's at 1,369,247, and there is nothing after that, then artificial intelligence cannot use that next number as a base to be able to create new numbers, new information. Now, obviously it can, because it can calculate what those numbers are. I'm talking about, pixelations or new ideas, because that's the end of all of its experience. And this is why it has a hard time with math, is because when it's adding two numbers together, if those two numbers that you're adding together are not already on the internet or in its background, it can't answer and it'll get it wrong.
Okay.
Because it's just guessing at what's the next number should be.
So the idea of it learning from us, it doesn't learn anything, it just regurgitates information.
Exactly. What they call learning is not real learning.
Okay.
And so there's no growth, there's no experimentation in its growth. And that's the problem. Real intelligence is building on prior information to experiment with new information. And so when we talk about humans, teenagers are the key to humanity's development, unfortunately.
Lord save us.
Exactly. They are the scariest.
You are our hope and our future.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. When you get into that teenager stage, and this is why parents have such a hard time with teenagers. One day you'll ask them to clean their room and they will be just fine with it. The next day they will cry and just run into their room, flop on their bed, just cry for hours. The next day they will scream and yell, "How can you be so mean to them?" and run the whole gamut of responses day after day. And what's happening in their brain is that the brain is looking at, again, going back to math, 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, so that's everything that they've experienced up to, say, age 13. Okay. 1 + 1 = 2. That's what's programmed into their brain. Well, now their brain is saying, okay, I know 1 + 1 = 2, but what if it equals 3? What if it equals 4? What if 1 + 1 equals 1,367,468? And so what it does is it experiments, and it gives a different response every single day because it is building a database of the best possible reactions. And so it is experimenting with new responses, new information to be able to find out what is the best response. And so it will do 1 + 1 = 5, which is crying and screaming. 1 + 1 = 6, which is yelling and fighting. Well, those didn't get good responses from mom and dad. So let's go back to 1 + 1 = 2, which is nice, calm, I go and clean my room. Well, that got a great response. Well, now the brain knows 1 + 1 does indeed equal 2.
So kind of what you're implying is this trial and error that your brain processes through to deduce it down to, the best possible answer. Not like, and what I mean by that is that, in comparison to an AI is going to gather all this information and give you the best possible answer from that. So the accuracy is close, but it's not like truly the most dependable source. However, the difference is with a human mind, we have the ability to reason with it and determine from there the most logical response. And that trial is, well, if I do this, then the trial is, or if it equals 6, the trial is explosive. If I do this one, the trial is emotionally unstable. But if I do this one, it's standard. And so my brain now catalogs that and says, okay, going forward, this is the most, like, it doesn't prevent me from having, episodes that I revisit those for lack of learning, I guess, the first time. But in a nutshell, it kind of is our own character development, our own logical reasoning as we grow. That really is the lacking element in AI.
Yeah, and that experimentation, that growth, that learning, that development of better responses based on communication back is really important. Now, in an individual communication with, artwork or with ChatGPT or any of these, you can say that was wrong, and it'll say, I'm sorry that was wrong, let me fix that. And it may attempt to fix it, and it may fix it correctly or not. But that individual component now creates a response, but someone else who simultaneously asks that same question will now get not that new response off of this person saying you were wrong. Mm-hmm. It will get the old response. It doesn't learn.
Okay.
It gets supplied information, but it's not actually learning and applying that learning. And that's what makes it not intelligence. It's not artificial intelligence because it's not actually learning. It's regurgitating facts. It's a search engine.
Yeah, a really, really big, fast search engine. But, the only difference is that instead of giving, 85 different answers for a solution like Google does, where you're like, okay, well, which one do I pick? Do I pick this plumbing service or this plumbing service? It's going to single it into one that may or may not actually be the best advice.
Yeah, and a lot of us think about ChatGPT getting responses similar to what Google does. You get all the verbal response, but the same thing applies to anyone creating artwork, anyone creating all these other things, websites, music, poems, whatever, off of all of these different quote unquote artificial intelligence sites, think about the responses that you get from Google and imagine each one as a pixel to a picture. That creates a piece of art. Well, now all you've done is, instead of that pixelated work of art, now you're creating an actual work of art with the same kind of search engine response. You're asking for a picture of a water bottle on a table, and it's going to generate something for you, but it's just pixelated data. It's just the responses that you would get from Google in picture format. It's not intelligent.
There was a photographer that I'm really good friends with that he posted something about AI, and it was an image generator. So it was basically generating what looked like real life people in party scenes and that kind of stuff. And it was interesting because my wife is an artist and that kind of stuff. So, I've learned some of the challenges that come with, particular things, particular images that you want to try to draw. And one of the most difficult things is the human hand. And this photographer said, you can always pinpoint an AI because the hands, like there's extra knuckles. The fingers are 8 feet long. They're so weird. And as soon as he said that, I was like, no way. And I looked at the hands. I'm like, they're the weirdest hands. Mm-hmm. Oh, they're alien hands. There's backwards facing knuckles. Like, oh, it's so, like, after I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. And it was grossing me out because of how bad this just distorted the whole image. And I'm like, okay, now I'm like, it has the same problem that actual people have drawing hands.
Yeah. And that's part of the problem, where people suddenly assume that this is somehow intelligent because has the same problems that humans do.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, no. A really good artist won't have problem with hands.
Yeah, eventually they know how to learn how to overcome drawing that particular challenge.
Exactly. Yeah. So you would think, with how long these things have been around and how quote unquote quick they learn, that these image generators would actually learn how to draw hands, but they don't, and they never will, because they're not actually intelligent. All they are is tools to help you along the process that will give you the best approximation of something. But because no one's a specialist in everything, we can't all see it. Artists see the problems with the art, but the average person isn't a specialist in art, so they don't catch those things. People who are specialists in web design see the problems with these auto-generated things, but the layperson doesn't see it.
I admit that I use AI, but I don't use it in the sense that I'm dependent solely on it. I have a background in creativity and writing, and so I use the AI as kind of like if I've ever done like speaking, I use it as a verbal cue. I use it as, hey, give me an idea. It's like topics. Like I typed in topics about AI, funny topics, and I got a list of 10 things that were like goofy things about. But it also came with a cool warning. I figured I'd read this. This came from ChatGPT. But remember to approach the topic of AI with humor and lightheartedness, while also being mindful of ethical considerations and avoiding offensive or harmful content. And I'm like, okay, first off, I'm going to probably say something harmful by saying we need to replace the word intelligence or artificial intelligence with the end of our podcast name. So artificial idiot, I don't know if that's, maybe that's harmful content, but I was thinking what else do? You're just like the Do Stuff Better app, that's pretty much what it is you're just increasing productivity across the board. And no doubt, I think that advancing in that makes people excel better. And so if it's a useful tool, like we say, then that's a great advancement for us to catalog information faster, recall information faster. But I think, I think probably the part of AI that we don't recognize, like we have these softwares and that kind of stuff, but the part of AI that is out there currently that we've had for years is, let's even go as far as what's the name of that little robot vacuum, the Roomba.
The Roomba?
Yeah. Yeah. Or the Alexa or Google or what's it, Siri. All of those are AI triggered, like we're voice triggered AI that responds to our ask and directive. And it just, again, regurgitates information. With a Roomba, you lay out a floor plan and it follows instructions. So it's like a remote control car. But that's kind of this early form that it's in our house. Like it can talk to my TV. I can tell it to do things like that. I can turn on songs whenever I want, whatever I want. It's insane.
But again, you can't call it intelligence. It's a generated response tool.
Yeah.
That's all it is. A Roomba, it creates a generated response to it hits a wall, it turns around. It hits an object, it turns around. There's stuff on the floor, picks it up. It's just creating a response. It's not intelligence. It's just a generated response that's been programmed into it. And that's it. There's no ability for it to expand beyond its programming. There's no ability for it to learn or experiment or actually grow. And that's what intelligence is.
So why all of the, they had this like some 200 leaders in the industry and billionaires. And yeah, I'm not going to say names because you guys know the few that I speak of, but come together and sign this petition that say worldwide, we need to regulate this. We need to put some clamps down on this thing and make sure that it's not, they're already talking about passing laws in the US government to try to limit its reaches. And I'm like, okay, guys, like you're really just reducing how much the search engine can give you.
Well, all they're doing, they're doing two things. Okay. And there are two sides to this. One, there are people who are trying to protect their jobs because this kind of auto generation will get rid of jobs. And so that's one specific area that by having automatically generated responses, you go from needing someone to do from A to Z to just needing to do X, Y, and Z. Just the check at the end.
Okay.
To make sure everything looks right. And then do some slight fixes. So there's potential for job loss. And that's what they're trying to protect is jobs.
Yeah, but if I'm a billionaire, do you think I'm worried about some kid who wants to keep his job or not?
Lobbyists are trying to protect jobs. You've got unions. You've got a lot of these situations that are coming in to try to protect the jobs. So we saw the same thing when the computer age and everything came in and people were losing jobs and factories and things like this because now it's all being automated by robots and all these kinds of things. This is the exact same thing that happened. This is no different.
Car manufacturers.
We just have very short memories for some reason that the average person doesn't realize that this is just a repeat of what we've already been through.
Okay.
The other side to it is, you know what the biggest moneymaker is? Fear-mongering.
Ooh.
By making it sound scary, everyone wants it. Horror films, dramas. You've got all of these action movies.
I actually just watched a movie about a companion that was developed off of AI. And it was pretty sophisticated stuff. It was, I can say it, but I wouldn't recommend it for anybody who's younger. And so this, it's okay. We mark it for not suitable for kids. So I can say it. It's Megan is the name of the movie. And it's about a artificial intelligence, little personality, like a companion that comes home and learns off of what you do and starts, even dance moves and mannerisms and how you answer okie dokie. It'll start replying in the same sort of language that you speak in. And this one just goes completely nuts and it turns into Chucky, this generation. So, I think Megan is a little bit more of an appropriate word for, instead of Chucky, there's no Chuckies that are, born this era, but Megans. Yeah. There's some Megans. So Yeah, I don't know. Like it just reminds me of that of like, that fear mongering. There's movies. I mean, you can capitalize on just that alone. That's always kind of been there, and I think everybody's really kind of fascinated. I said Terminator, Skynet's coming, but in reality, like we're a long ways away from, having Rosie the robot from the Jetsons show up and, whoop us around.
I would say we are at least 50 years away from the practical application of true, and I don't even call it artificial intelligence anymore because we've destroyed that word. I call it robotic intelligence.
Okay.
And so true robotic intelligence is the mimicking of the human mind in robotic form. And so true robotic intelligence is probably a good 50 years away at least. I'd say probably closer to 100 years.
Wow.
Before it's ever going to be practically applicable.
You got to write that down in history books, guys. Joe said it first.
There you go. But fear is what drives us to the movies. Name a genre of movie that people generally don't go to. Like, what's the most lambasted genre of movie?
I don't know. Like,
rom-coms.
Yeah, I was going to say rom-coms. Like, yeah.
Rom-coms. Everyone talks negative about a rom-com.
It's true. It's true.
What?
You'll watch it at home. You won't pay for it.
Right, exactly. You don't
you
go
don't
to the
admit,
movies.
You don't admit that you went to a rom-com.
You go to a rom-com on a date because you're not actually watching the movie.
True.
Okay?
Fair enough.
And so rom-coms are the most, put down movie style. And why is that? It's because there's no action.
Yeah.
There's no fear. There's no adrenaline. There's nothing that goes on to drive you there. And this isn't just a man thing. Women do this as well. Women like action movies. I know there's this stereotype that women love rom-coms, men love action movies. It's totally bogus.
And yeah, I agree with you. My wife's a horror movie kind of person. Like she watches the craziest movies, and I'm like stuff I won't even watch.
Yeah.
So those are our rom-coms.
There you go. But what we see there is that fear-mongering, that scariness leads people to those things. They want to be scared. Mm-hmm. Roller coasters.
Yeah. Theme
parks. What are the rides that people don't go on?
Oh, they even have scary names. Like here our local one is Colossus, and there's Cannibal. That's like the biggest rave. So yeah.
And what is the most, again, put down theme park ride?
Probably the Ferris wheel.
No, actually, a lot of people like the Ferris wheel.
I know. Especially
it's a small world.
Big. Okay. All right.
Everyone talks. It's so bad that it's actually a joke in TV shows and cartoons. It's a Small World is the most put down. And why? Because it talks about togetherness. It talks about bringing people together. That it's not a small world, that we're all connected. It's a message of hope and happiness. No one wants that.
It's true.
They want to be scared.
Conflict and fear.
That's because it's adrenaline inducing. And so what these top guys are, they're good at marketing. So if they want people using their product...
To fifth graders, just so you know.
To fifth graders. I don't know any fifth grader who would turn down a horror movie to go ride It's a Small World after all. But they know what they're doing in order to induce fear and to induce adrenaline in the general public so that people actually use their product. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but you know this well, that a lot of marketing is counterintuitive.
Yes.
And so it's one of those things where that's why so many people are so negative about artificial intelligence, why these people are getting together, the industry experts, to put this into place, because they're trying to get people to buy their product. And yeah, I know some of this stuff is free, but you're still buying stuff. They're selling your data. They're putting ads. There's a reason they want you to use this. They're making money on it.
Yes, I agree.
It's not intelligence. It's just auto response generator. Let's call it what it is.
A software.
That's it. So real intelligence, real true intelligence comes from growth, from development, from going beyond. I mean, we knew this back in the 80s. One of my favorite movies of all time is
Star Trek.
Short Circuit.
Oh, fantastic movie. I love that one.
Awesome. But that movie
Isn't that number 5 still alive or whatever?
Johnny
Yeah.
5
That's what it
alive.
is, yeah.
I love that. But what it does is it actually talks about what real intelligence is.
Mhm.
Because they even test him, Johnny 5. He's going through and he's learning, he's experimenting, he's trying new things. And at the very end, they test him on giving static responses. And he doesn't give static responses. He gives outside the norm responses.
Well, they even show that like when the little baby like short circuit robots are floating around and stuff like that and they're learning.
That's
you
a different
see
one.
What? No, that's
batteries not included.
Oh, okay. You're right. I'm sorry. But that's another great movie.
Yeah,
anyway.
I have that one too. I love that one. They
one's
came
another-
around the same time.
They're like I remember that one because they adapt in what they're doing. They do trial and error and they're like, okay, well then we'll build this and we'll go over here and do this, try this again, and they just keep persisting toward the goal. And but they're adapting to that as they go along.
And that's actual growth. That's actual intelligence. That's learning. That's developing. And that is another good example of showing how this robotic society,
well, ladies
these
and
robotic
gentlemen,
aliens,
we actually can learn something from the 80s, it sounds like. So, you know,
few and far between, but it's there.
there's
But to go from Short Circuit, Johnny 5 alive, to today calling artificial intelligence just a regurgitator of data, we have fallen so far in 40 years from what artificial intelligence used to be understood as. And that's how you can understand that these guys have just dumbed down the terms artificial intelligence, because we knew what it was in the 80s.
Yeah, hey guys, we're better than this because I feel a little insulted by the fact that we're being treated the way that we are for something, and they call it intelligence, and it's absolutely not. Yeah. So go back, watch a couple movies from the 80s, and refresh your memory on what actual intelligence might look like in the artificial form. And then you'll come back here and be like, yeah, so I got this new search engine called whatever, and it creates pictures for me. Oh, that's artificial intelligence. There's nothing intelligent about that at all. So anyway, moving on. I want to bring up a very, very, very important subject here, or sub-subject, and that would be that recently in a library, in it's Aberdeen Timberland Library in Washington State, they received a copy of The Bounty Trilogy by Charles Nordhoff and James Norman Hall. And there was a little library card. I don't know if you're like, they don't do this anymore. You get like a receipt when you go to the library and it tells you, or you can say, I don't want a receipt. And if you have the app, it'll text, it'll do like, it will let you know you have a library book out, but
you can't get away from it.
Yeah. They'll cop knock on your door and be like, give me just kidding. But they used to have this sleeve with an envelope and a little stamp card. I mean, I'm not as old as this one was, but basically they received a book that was overdue. It was due back. The due date back was March 30th, 1942. No, so the story is actually kind of entertaining because, they did the math. It was 2 cents per day when it's overdue, and 2 cents per day. I got pretty close, I think, but it was from there. If they did the math from there, not counting inflation, it was $484 that person would owe. And they found it in a storage unit, and they decided to bring it to the library and return it. So they were really super happy that this book is now, in their possession, and they're probably going to get rid of it. But now they have it. And one of the things that I found really, really entertaining, and I want to make sure, but it was the fact that you can go on to different book ordering websites or book reading sites and that kind of stuff, and you can give your 2 cents there on what you feel about this book. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this person who checked this book out gave a review on the inside of the cover of this book, and it said, "I wouldn't read this book if I was paid to." I feel like somebody got this book out of spite to give them this. And that's their... Wow. So, I mean, like, man, there are haters way back in the day.
Wow.
But some good news is COVID-19 helped out in this sense that I don't think... I didn't get any phone calls from the library. I'm pretty sure this is a normal thing everywhere at this point. But they don't have late fees anymore. In the last few years, I haven't had any late fees on my library card. But at the same time, I knew that during the pandemic they went away from it. I'm sure that eventually they'll probably get back to it, just in the case of what we're talking about right here.
No, there are some jurisdictions that still have the library fines, and you'll actually go to jail for library fines in some jurisdictions. I looked this up because I was watching an episode of another favorite show of mine, The Middle, and one of the characters goes to jail for an overdue book. And I'm like, this is such a stupid storyline because that would never actually happen. So, I run through that show every couple of years. And so this last time when I ran through the episodes, I'm like, I'm going to look this up, because it was frustrating. So I look it up, and I actually found a ton of stories of people going to jail for overdue book fines.
So after a certain amount of days, an overdue book can be considered stolen, and you could be fined not only the usual overdue fees, but for theft as well. And theft is something that you could be arrested for. So they could press charges for stealing from the library if you don't return. I mean, man, that library is really aggressive about their books.
It almost makes me scared to admit this, but I still have a book from when I was 8 or 9 years old.
Don't admit this.
That I ever forgot to turn back in.
We don't need to know the title.
6 Great Scientists or something. I am digging now myself a hole here.
They're coming for you, Joe.
But yeah, I just, I was a kid. You lose things as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
I only realized I had it because a few years ago I was cleaning out my parents' my stuff out of my parents' basement, and I found that book. I'm like, oh, I guess I never did turn this in.
Man, I mean, over the years, I've had moments where I, back in school, when I'd have to do a big project, and I'd get a bunch of books, and I'd rack up some fees. I used to do it on getting CDs, because I would take the CDs, and back in the day, they'd have the CDs and cassettes. Cassettes were cheaper than CDs. So I'd buy a bunch of blank cassettes, go get CDs, and then play it and then dub it into the cassette. So I'm listening to my, guys, I'm old enough. Okay. Shh, quiet. But this was great because I could get, the CD that I couldn't go buy at the store for half the cost or less than half the cost, because cassettes were dirt cheap by then. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that was just being broke and figuring out how to listen to music normally. Wanted to listen to music while I mowed lawns. Don't judge me. But
pre-Napster days, right?
And then, yeah, exactly. Napster, what's that?
Yeah. Kids, this is what happened before Napster. I know you guys think that Napster is old and how could people do that? There was older stuff.
Yes, high-speed dubbing. That was an advertisement line usually on those things. So you could quickly copy a CD or copy a cassette, not the CD. Once the computers came out, then all of a sudden you start using the word ripping a CD, where you could just save it as an MP3 to your library. But then everybody's like, what's an MP3? You're like, that's what the format is that's saved. Never mind. Stop. You don't even ask questions anymore, you know? But
Boy, we're really getting into some criminality on today's episode.
I know, man. I haven't admitted to any of this. I just know. There's a difference between saying like, I have a library book and saying they do this in
Dang it.
The other one that I was thinking of is like in regards to fines, like around, this was like early 2000s, like 2006, 2007, I got this stack of books, and the stack of books was for learning as much as I could about eBay and e-commerce. And, you know, like I had ordered some shoes from a place and tried to e-com them. Like even then it was a nightmare. It was horrible. So like you basically try to become an Amazon in your own house, and you have a whole bunch of boxes and you're buried in, you know, then I ended up having too many boxes. I buried the library books and I couldn't find them for a couple months. And then I found them all and I was like, oh no. And I had to take them back to the library. And it was like $40 something for the fines cause I checked out like, I think it was like 15 books, all real thick, like manuals on e-com. And yeah, I should know a lot more or be making a lot more money than I am right now for what I know about first gen e-com. But no, I didn't win in that category. But anyway, that's kind of the lesson learned is, ladies and gentlemen, return your library books and don't admit to illegal activity.
Whoops.
Well, until next time, I want to thank you guys for listening. And Joe, do you have anything else before we sign off?
Nope.
All right.
Sorry, plain spoken here.
That was good. Very, very, very. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. And until next time, I'm Adam Richardson.
I'm Joe Haslam, and always check your shoes.